Good morning, one and all. It's good to have you here this morning. I trust that you have been well fed or are still feeding yourselves well. Please don't hesitate to go back for seconds or thirds or fourths, depending on how quickly you eat. We have plenty of food. Last time I looked, we had plenty of food left. So don't hesitate. There's coffee, and both leaded and unleaded. In that corner, there's water also over there. So please make yourself comfortable. My name is Emilie Towns. I'm the Dean of the Divinity School, and very happy to greet you as I have done each year for now these last 5 years at our first community breakfast. This morning, I decided it might be good to talk to you a little bit about the newest initiative we have here at the Divinity School, the Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative. But before I do that, and I actually prepared remarks today, which is unusual for a community breakfast, but I thought better I do it that way. Before I begin, can we take a moment of silence to pray for the health and the recovery of all the victims of Hurricane Maria, who is tearing through the Caribbean once again and reaping devastation once again, now this third time of this hurricane season. A moment, please. Blessed be. So let me begin with a shortish description I wrote for the collaborative when all we had was the first installment of the money from the Luce Foundation and a successful proposal that helped us win the $1 million over 3 years. We were still in my mind's eye. The irony of having 3 years to put a big dent on racial injustice through our religious convictions when we have had some form of racism since the time of Aristotle, at least, was not to be taken lightly. So, the Vanderbilt Divinity School Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative is a partnership with the Henry Luce Foundation that was formed to combat the idolatry of racism that remains widespread in our society by engaging academy, religious bodies, and society on the local and national level. It will be harnessing the power of public theology's ability to explore how faith plays a role in how we respond to the events of our day, and how religion speaks to the issues that are at the heart of our public debates, to challenge our ties to our respective religious communities that often keep us siloed within particular racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and faith boundaries, to name a few. We hope to be both faithful and bold in engaging a broad spectrum of people and groups in examining and critiquing our existing social practices and cultural understandings through the lens of our religious insights, with the goal of fostering multiracial, interreligious networks that are dedicated to working toward imagining and building a just society for all. The collaborative has just 3 years of focus to do this work, and we have chosen these 3: activism, education, and media. As a Southern liberal, progressive, university-based divinity school, Vanderbilt Divinity School is strategically situated to lead this project as a collaborative formed by networking with groups locally and across the United States that are working for racial justice. It emerges in part from Chancellor Nicholas Zeppo's vision for strengthening the university's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as the university's 10-year academic strategic plan that calls on faculty and students to, quote, address important problems and questions facing our community, our country, and world, close quote. To do so, the collaborative's work will center around two areas. First, bolstering opportunities for Vanderbilt students to engage with issues of public theology and racial justice through a series of grants to Vanderbilt students who are interested in exploring these issues on the graduate and professional levels. I need to say here, the Luce Foundation does not fund undergraduate education. We're working on that. Students will be supervised by the associate director or individual faculty members on these projects that can run the gamut from researching a social issue to working with local community organizations. Second, we aim to establish Vanderbilt as a national leader for shifting the theological ground toward a just world by hosting each summer two 6-day summer institutes in public theology and racial justice that will engage and train students, clergy and laity, business leaders, politicians, civil servants, advocates, grassroots organizers, and activists. And yes, I know these groups don't all get along, but that's the point. If we keep in our silos, we will continue to not get along, and the world will continue to get worse. The Summer Institutes, designed to live well past the 3 years of the grant, will focus on different topics related to public theology and racial justice and make use of keynote speakers, panel discussions, and workshops. The media dimension of the collaborative includes recording short and informal TED-style talks addressing with Summer Institute participants and at all events that we have related to the collaborative. It will be an opportunity to document the stories of racial justice workers via audio recordings. These videos and audio clips will allow the collaborative to share widely through social media and local and national media outlets to help foster important conversations and strategies to address racial justice. Above all, the collaborative's goal is to serve as a national resource for thought leaders and activists who are passionate about creating a multi-faith network that is dedicated to transforming the current negative cultural narrative related to race into one that's more robust conversations on creating a world that welcomes all. I am very much aware that that sounds rather utopian. However, my job as a social ethicist is to be both utopian and realistic, and then work like the Dickens to make justice true. So, what's behind this dream or vision? What prompted me to write that kind of description for the collaborative? Well, here's something I wrote for Vanderbilt magazine that some of you have read, and so I will just repeat it for you and for the first time for those who haven't seen it. I've been trying to understand evil all my life. Not the individual acts of sin, but what I call systemic evil, like anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, classism, racism, sexism, and more. Over the years, I have come to understand evil as a cultural production. By this I mean I explore the ways in which a society can produce misery and suffering in relentlessly systematic and structural ways. We are in many ways imprisoned by the cultural production of evil, and I do not like it. And I think that none of us should accept it as the status quo for our lives. This status quo is built on despair that we sometimes rationalize as being realistic about the ways in which the worlds and the people of it work. We then suffer from a kind of least common denominator sense of fairness and compassion that does not call us to live beyond our comfort zones or what we believe or have been taught to believe into a world that is vast, as God continues to spin out creation into our lives. The Vanderbilt Divinity School Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative gives me an opportunity to join with others in our centuries-long attempt to eradicate racism and all its reciprocal forms of injustice and hatred. This is a particularly important moment to birth a collaborative such as this that seeks to be a hub for a national conversation on public theology and racial justice. By bringing together activists and practitioners and scholars to engage students, faculty, and community members here at Vanderbilt, Nashville, and beyond, I am finding my way back to that morning while watching the civil rights protests on television with my mother, when I asked her, "Mom, why do these people hate us? They don't even know us. They don't even know me." The look of pain but determination on my mother's face is something that I have carried with me for years. It was the look that many black parents in my generation gave to their children at some point. It was the look and then the verbal response that said quite simply, "I don't know, but I do know that you are a child of God, and because you are God's own creation, you are a gift to the world. Don't believe in hatred as a way of life." So how do we help folks discover this gift that all of us have been shaped by in some measure? How do we embrace the idea that hatred is a bankrupt way to live one's life? It's not only through the fellowships and scholarships that help students engage in projects. It's not only in the workshops that we will plan for the summer institutes. It will not only be in helping people gain media savvy to talk about race and racism and how we as religious leaders, activists, and practitioners must work with every fiber of our being to eradicate senseless fear and hatred. I think it will be in the ways which we meet with one another, face to face, to get to know each other, to stop engaging in gross caricaturizations of each other as if they were fact. No post-truth, no alternative facts. It is to come to know one another through working together while focused on the task of ending racism as much as we can in this generation, so that future generations can take up this work and carry on. So, today we have a dynamic associate director, Dr. Teresa Smallwood, who is representing the collaborative today at the New Baptist Covenant Summit meeting in Atlanta. Otherwise, she would be here and she would be greeting you as well. We have an energetic planning team that meets twice a semester, and our job is to keep up with them. From the Divinity School, Paul Lim, Vicki Matson, John McClure, Herb Marbury, Phyllis Shepard, Melissa Snar. From the wider university faculty, Brooke Ackerley, Robert Grajewski, Lucius Outlaw, Nicole Joseph. From our graduates, our alums, Jennifer Bailey, Eric Brown, DJ Hudson, Tara Lentz. From our board of visitors, Thomas Connor. And we have an excellent national advisory committee now, And my job is to hold them back from the ideas that they wish they could do where they're actually teaching, living, and doing their work. Mackie Austin, who's with the Auburn Theological Institute and also is a noted videographer. Judge Wendell Griffin of the 6th Judicial Circuit in Arkansas and also pastor of New Millennium Church, who gets himself in trouble on the regular. Janet Jacobson, who's a teacher at Barnard College with a background in lobbying in Washington in her first life. Stephen Lewis, who is the president of the Forum for Theological Exploration. It is a hub in creating new young leaders for this generation. And Tracy Mears, who's on the faculty of Yale Law School and was also on President Obama's Policing Commission. So again, you may be wondering, just what is this public theology? And I gave you a short definition again, earlier, but let me give it to you so that you know that's actually what I'm talking about. We use a very simple definition that presents both challenge and hope. Public theology is recognizing that faith plays a role in how we respond to current events, and religion speaks to many issues that are at the center of our public debates on contentious issues. That really is the only thing public theology is for the collective. To hearken to the prophet Ezekiel, we want to rattle our dry bones about race and racism and make our lives live with the spirit of justice, racial justice. That means we bring the rest of the isms along with it and live in the new heaven and new earth. So, that's where we are beginning. And one of the things that's so important for us is that we get feedback from folks that we hope to be in partnership with. So if you've got ideas, if you've got questions, now is the time to let your light shine. Any questions, any reactions, any feedback, any directions you hope we would go? Remember, we only got 3 years that we know of. Happy to hear them. Happy to, you're being taped, so I can go back and actually look at what was said and hear and feed that back to Teresa. So, and Shatika, once again, is our person with the traveling mic. The floor is open. Hold on.
How are those of us in the community here likely to have an opportunity to engage with the project?
Thank you. I did not plant her. I did not plant her. Next Thursday, September 28th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Ruby Event Center on, is it Blakemore at that port? Blakemore. We are having our official launch. And you will have lots of ways you can sign up for things, get on our mailing list, see what's happening. The Summer Institutes are a really good place to think about it. They will be early June in 2018, or this year. In 2018, they will be the first 2 weeks of June. I always mess up my J months. And we've tried to keep it affordable so that folks who can come, who want to come, can be here. And that's one place as well. We will have periodic events. Just yesterday, the law school, the graduate school, and the Divinity School agreed to put together a conference in fall of 2018, marking the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And why those 3 schools of the university? Well, we were the first 3 schools to desegregate. The Divinity School in 53, the law school in 56, and the graduate school either 55 or 57. We're not quite sure which one happened. And I contacted the other 2 deans and said, let's do this, and their first response was yes. So we finally figured out the theme, which has just gone right out of my head. Oh, no, I think I can remember. From MLK to BLM, 50 years of struggle. That was the one that everybody could agree on. Needless to say, the Divinity School's first attempt was a lot more edgier than that. And I knew my colleagues probably wouldn't go for it, but we had to put something on the table. But each of the schools will put together a panel. So each school gets to use whatever approach they want to. And there will be a reception for all the participants and attendees, and then also a keynote speaker to end the evening. And so we're now trying to gather names. So if you have names of folks that you think are good, folks who've come up have been folks like Judge Sheila Calloway here in the city, and then there have been big national names that have come up. So we'll have to see what we can afford. So there will be periodic events. So you want to get on a mailing list, because it won't just be the summer institutes, and that's the only opportunity. We're working with the TAPS grant, and three of the representatives from the TAPS grant that creating activists out of students, which is a really rump way to put it. I should let them say the actual name. Casey?
Vocations and Racial Justice, Transdisciplinary Activist Practitioners. Do you want to say a little bit?
There's a reason why I couldn't remember all that.
Yes, it's a mouthful.
Say it again, Casey.
It's Vocations and Racial Justice, Transdisciplinary Activist Practitioner Scholar. So the idea is we are developing a learning intervention for students, particularly undergraduate students, to help them think through how they can center racial justice in whatever field, vocation, calling that they're pursuing. So we are trying to mold them through this learning intervention into transdisciplinary activist practitioner scholars, superhumans. But that's the idea. But yes, we're funded through a chancellor's grant through the university, so it's in tandem with the work that the public theology grant is doing, but funded separately.
In the back. Oh,
Thank you. I'm Pat Pickett. I'm a pastor of a church in Springfield. And I don't know if this is jumping the gun or not, but I would like to suggest that you include children in some way. And the reason I say that is because in the last 3 years, since I've been at that particular church, I went there was a totally, am I in the?
yeah, just a little bit. There you
Okay,
go.
I went to a all-white church. People were still using the words that you don't want me to say,
Thank you.
and I won't.
Okay.
But I thought, they're not going to listen to me preaching anything like you would want me to say. So what I did was I opened an outreach program for children in art. That's my other life. I was an art teacher. We now have more kids in that program, children of color, than we have members in the church. And those children have softened the adults in ways that you can't imagine. Mm-hmm. We had a pageant last Christmas where these children really gave life to the church. And now we have people coming on Sunday who feel that they are welcome, which they didn't at first. And so I'm just saying, if there is some way, some component that you can have children will help you out somehow. Mm-hmm. They help me out. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Judy Cummings, and I pastor New Covenant Christian Church, Disciples of Christ here in this city. And I want to applaud.
And you just had which anniversary?
I just celebrated my 7th anniversary there at the
Thank you.
church. I want to applaud Vanderbilt for taking on this role. I have been asking the different universities in the city for somebody to courageously step up and to help us have this conversation. Last year, Lipscomb University stepped up and helped the mayor host what was called Real Dialogue. Mm-hmm. That was an attempt. And I hear what you're saying and the span and the broad and the width of it. But I'm also hoping that at some points, as you connect with the community, that you will help this community have the open, honest dialogue that we need to have. You know that we just had our first unarmed killing here in the city, and we're on track to have even more. Mm-hmm. And in a city that has so many universities, so much scholarship, we're going to need, I think, the academy to help to steer that dialogue and help shape what that looks like, because there is a lot of racial tension here in the city. Mm-hmm. You talk about the different places where the students can tap in to do their research. I hope that that you have students who will look outside of the traditional. I am chairing, I know a lot of you had issues with traffic as you drove in this morning trying to get here, so I am chairing our traffic issue for the next 2 years. The referendum will be on the ballot this coming May. That is an equity and equality issue, and so I hope that there is a student who is brave enough to even help me tackle that issue over the next 2 years.
All right, students who are here. I think the call for applications has gone out or is going out for student-funded initiatives. So here you have somebody right here who's ready and primed.
And I would also offer NOAA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, a social activist organization, also for the students to be able to do work.
Okay, thank you. Others? You don't want me to start singing. Oh, no.
Can you say a bit more about the media part of what you're doing?
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things we've learned and probably have experienced, many of us, is that we don't really know how to tie faith with anti-racism activism in front of a microphone. We either talk too much or too little about how the two are combined. So what the media training is designed to do is to help bring out your voice, not to follow a script, but bring out your voice, your faith story, as it relates to why you are concerned about racial justice and how we all need to work together, because it's not going to be individual folk doing it. Let me just say that one of the things that the collaborative is clear about is that we're not trying to build another organization. What we're trying to do is build a network, a conscious network. Some folks are well networked with each other. But one of the things that I've learned, even in the last 6 months talking to people, is that there's still groups out there who don't know that there are other groups in the cities where they are doing similar work around racial justice. So how do we make each other aware of ourselves? How do we work together? In other words, how do we get organized in order to address, rather than do individual acts where then, frankly, we can be picked off very easily. But when you form a bond, that's a little harder to undo, which doesn't ensure it won't be, but at least we have a better chance. Is that helpful, Joe? Yeah. I thought I saw another hand flashing. Allie?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dean Towns. This is a really moving initiative. The card is going around inviting people to the upcoming event on September 28th, and on the right-hand side is a picture of Muslim women activists. And so could you talk about theology and the interreligious component, or just kind of how that will play out in terms of not just a Christian perspective?
We're trying very hard to work carefully, and one of the things that we'll be doing in April, actually, with a consortium that is interreligious, is hosting Reverend William Barber's Moral Mobile Seminar, or Mobile Moral, I think it's Moral Mobile Seminar here, and it will be at the Temple on Harding Pike. And so that's an interfaith collaboration. Some of the Christian pastors whose churches are participating, Judy Hoffman is one of those churches, there are a few others in the room, are joining with an increasing coalition of folks. And so one of my jobs today is to talk to Osama Balul, wherever he is, if he hasn't left already, to see if the Islamic Center, the faith group that's headed up by Zahid Nair is involved already. But it's very clear that it can't be just a Christian dialogue. Although Christians are the majority in the city of Nashville, and most of the rhetoric we hear that's racist is coming out of Christian communities. So we need to take responsibility for that. But other groups, other religious groups also have insights and things that we need to listen to. And so my first question to repairers of the breach is, can this be interfaith? Because if it can't be, then we can't do it. And their next response was, absolutely, it's interfaith. So. And we're going to build from there. Time for one more question. Oh, somebody else who hasn't talked gets to talk. You can ask me afterwards, Joe.
I was just wondering, are you going to be working with students in any way to create media?
Yes.
Just because I'm working with the Vanderbilt Divinity Media Center here, they do have a new initiative where students can actually create content, and it can be shared and distributed through the community campus. A certain thing like that where I'm trying to create my own media that incorporates yoga, divinity, and race. Just wondering, bringing those elements together. It kind of sounds like that's what you guys are preparing students to do as well. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, we are. Whoever wants to shine in their own media way, we'll do media training with them. That's one of the things that we don't have to be as mindful of in terms of who we're addressing with the Luce Foundation. If you show up for the initiatives or the institute in the summer, you're eligible. And we'll find other ways as well. I want to thank you all for coming this morning. It's so nice to see so many out. Oh my goodness. And I hope that as you hear about and want to be involved with, you can go on our webpage and sign up for the newsletter. This is where I'm missing Teresa mightily, because she would have had a sign-up sheet. But there is a link you can click to say, I want to be kept up to date with what's going on. And the webpage link is Public Theology, racialjustice.org. No Vanderbilt in the title yet. So please, please, please join us in this work. Spread the word, and we'll do what we can in our lifetimes. Have a great morning and best rest of the week. Take care.